This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Audible. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020, and my guest is no other than David Imel of Android Authority. Hi, David. How are you?
Hey, doing about as good as I can do on June 3rd of 2020.
It's a pretty crazy time we live in, right?
Yeah, very.
Wow. But we're getting phones. The saga continues.
Yep.
We're trying to our best to keep you, the audience, informed of the tech shenanigans because that's our jobs. And so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. I really want to start, David, with your review of the Samsung Galaxy A51. We haven't really discussed this phone on the show much because I don't have a review in it.
Yeah, we had to buy one.
You know, it's interesting because it's kind of been doing the rounds, though. A lot of people have been reviewing it because with the pandemic right now and the economy, people are really looking at spending less money on a new phone, right?
Yeah.
And so iPhone SE, you reviewed it, the new one. And now this A51, which actually I think came out before the SE technically.
I think it was at least announced before the SE, but it was hard to get a hold of until kind of after. But it had come out in like different markets, I believe. And it's available in all these different variants and whatnot. But like in the US, it only has like one variant. But in India, it's in 3 variants. And it's very confusing.
But it is a Samsung phone that outsells their flagships. In fact, it's the second best-selling phone after the iPhone 11, as you mentioned in your video.
Yeah.
So, do we care? Is it important?
No. Unfortunately. I really wanted to like this phone because for the same reason that we were just talking about, like the iPhone SE is so good and it's $400.
Right.
And the people that don't want iOS or more particularly want to use Android for a number of reasons, they don't really have a lot of new options that are up to that quality standard as the iPhone SE, right? And that's because like the iPhone SE has the newest processor that's in the iPhone 11 series, and then it's got iOS, and so like the combination of those two things lets it run like really, really well. Whereas Android is not really optimized for any particular phone. Even the Pixel phones are not necessarily optimized for Android. And so because of that, it's like 4 gigabytes of RAM is the variant that they sell in the United States. That's the $399 model. Although on Amazon, it's already like...
I was going to say, you can get it for $280 some places now. It's kind of insane, right?
It's crazy discounted already on Amazon. It's like $280 or something. But the problem is 4 gigabytes of RAM, like we saw in the Pixel 3 series, is just not enough to run Android smoothly. And the experience was just really bad. It's also running an mid-ranged Exynos processor, which we've always kind of known Exynos processors are not the best.
Yeah, I wonder how much is the RAM. I mean, the RAM is legitimate an issue, right?
I mean, it was dropping apps from memory constantly, like.
But I think I have a feeling the Exynos is a big part of the problem too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because like there was like a lot of stuttering and just like general jankiness that you don't get from most modern Android phones. And I want to, honestly, in my review, and at the end of my video review, I think I said this, if you need to buy a phone for $399 and you need it to be an Android phone, then just buy a flagship from a year or two ago. Like,
actually, honestly, save your money and buy a OnePlus 7T for $499.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's $499. You can buy a 6T for like $300, like $299.
There you go.
And those phones are great. Like the 7T is really good, the 6T is really good, and even the OnePlus 5 series has Android 10.
You can buy the 7 as well. Like it's not official in the US, but I believe there's a bunch of retailers selling it.
I'm sure, yeah.
And it's about $399, which I think is still a better buy because of a better processor than the 6T.
Yeah, true.
But you're right. I mean, here's my gut feeling after reading your review and like Dieter's review on The Verge and a bunch of other people that reviewed the A51. I actually reached out to Samsung and said, hey, send me a review in it. I want to I want to try this for myself. They haven't responded. They never send me anything, so I don't expect much. But at the same time, it's like, to me, this is the anti-iPhone SE at the same MSRP price point, right? Because the display is super nice, right? Mm-hmm. The camera system is obviously not as nice in terms of the end result, but offers way more flexibility and features.
Yeah.
On paper is more, advanced because there's so many cameras and lenses and choices and ultra wide and whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's completely the reverse in terms of like RAM and processor and performance, right? Where we know the iPhone SE has like essentially one of the fastest chips in the business today as its core. Mm-hmm. This thing is like cutting corners with 4 gigs of RAM and some middling Exynos. I recently played with the Moto One Action that came out last year, and that's also an Exynos. I don't think it's the same level of quality, like it's not as high, as mid-range of an Exynos as the A51. But man, it's
there's a Motorola phone with an Exynos processor?
Yes, believe it or not, the Moto One Action.
I did not know that existed. I knew the Action existed. I didn't know that Motorola phones used Exynos.
It's crazy. That's weird. So it's interesting because I've had the same sluggish experience with that Exynos as well.
I think the fact of the matter is that just like Qualcomm is so far ahead of everybody else in the Android space.
Other than Apple, right?
Yeah, in the Android space. Because like every Exynos phone, like people have been complaining for years that the flagship Samsung phones are way worse globally, the global models that run the Exynos processors.
I mean, there was a time they were competitive.
It's mostly the battery life, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just way worse.
Today, it's basically you either go Kirin or you go Qualcomm.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody else, and Apple, of course. I think that MediaTek is getting there, but they're still not quite there. I mean, they're getting close. Like I don't know if you know that I write review phones for Hot Hardware right now. Mm-hmm. And I contributed to a story recently that just got published yesterday, I think, about AI performance on mobile processors. I ran some benchmarks on the Kirin chips and the MediaTek chips because I have a bunch of phones. Like I have a Reno 2Z, which has the P90 from MediaTek, which about a year ago was their top flagship chip. So it's kind of, if you think of last year, 2018, 2019 timeframe, we had the 855 and we had, the P90 from MediaTek, and it holds its own in AI performance. It's not as good as the best, but it's really surprisingly good. So I think MediaTek is getting there. But I feel like Exynos is just falling behind. By the way, the One Action from Moto is a 9609. What version is the A51?
I don't know offhand because I'd never heard about it before and had to look it up.
Well, I can look it up. It's not very hard. But anyway, so I mean, if they had a faster processor and say 6 gigs of RAM on that, would you change your tune on this phone? Yeah,
I think so. Because my whole thing for the last number of years has been like, phones are kind of phones, and the only thing, especially like in Android, right? And the only thing that is going to like separate them is like camera performance, battery life, and if there's no jankiness, then like why do you care what processor your phone has in it? And I'm not a mobile gamer, so I know that like for people that game, that might be a thing, even though most games on phones are already locked to like 30 to 60 FPS anyway, and as long as you can hit that 60 FPS, then anything past that doesn't really matter. So like I think Andrew Martinick from Android Central wrote an article recently that said most people don't know what processors in their phone, and that's okay. And I think it was talking about how like when the Pixel 5 comes out, right, if that has a mid-range processor like it's supposed to have, if it runs smoothly, who cares? Like, who cares?
I agree. And I was going to say, like, I think this is a good segue towards our next topic in a way, because I've been playing with the Moto G stylus and the Moto G Power, which are powered by Snapdragon 665. And I recently reviewed the TCL 10L and 10 Pro, which are powered by Snapdragon 665 and 675 respectively. And all of these phones are running pretty stock builds of Android that have been somewhat optimized for that device. Like they're not, just stock versions that have been just pasted on there. They've tweaked them a little bit to work best on that platform. And honestly, they're not sluggish. They other than playing games on them where you really start noticing performance differential between that and a 7 or 800 series Snapdragon, they are perfectly fine. So you're right. I think it shouldn't matter, but the fact that it still matters on these Exynos chips and it is a bad sign. By the way, I just looked it up, and the Samsung Galaxy A51 is a 9611 Exynos.
Oh, okay. So slightly higher.
It doesn't say the details here, but whatever. The bottom line is they're probably very close. They're part of the same family.
I mean, when I ran benchmarks on it too, it was like your device defeated 13% of users. I was like, oh God.
Oh boy. Well, that's the same thing as the TCL 10L. When I ran the benchmarks, I reviewed the 10L and the 10 Pro for Hot Hardware, and they both kind of slot like, most of the devices we review there are flagships, and so our database is mostly flagship results, including like last year's flagship, and it was all like it was so at the bottom end of it. But I think that didn't really translate with the TCL phones and user experience being poor. And what you're saying here is that A51 translates in a poor experience, which is really sad.
It's unfortunate because, again, like the screen is really good on that phone. Right. It's got, like you said, very versatile cameras, and they're not even that bad. Like, obviously, certain colors like greens and reds and blues are like really oversaturated, but that's super classic for Samsung cameras.
Though. Do you see a lot of that extra sharpening that Samsung's famous for?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Why do they have to do that to us?
But I mean, if you take those things away, it's not that bad for a $280 effective phone, right? And I reviewed this phone because I was hoping that it would be the Android iPhone SE, and I guess that's what the Pixel 4a is going to have to be, but Google keeps delaying this thing. So it was supposed to be May for I/O, and then it was June, and now it's apparently July, and it's just like, geez, are you ever going to release this? Because like Apple's going to sell an absolute boatload of iPhone SEs if you don't get these out.
I mean, but the thing is, you can't really compare them, right? I mean, the reality is I don't see people switching from an iPhone ever at this point with the SE existing to an Android phone. There's no reason for any iPhone user to go back.
I know a number of people that are considering switching to iOS from Android because of the SE.
Because of the SE. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a real thing. I think what the 4A is gonna, and we're gonna talk about the 4A XL in a second, but I think the 4A is going to be, exactly what we expect, but they're going to be a little more aggressive on price than we expected.
Yeah, it's supposed to be $350, I think.
Yeah, and I think at that price, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat for those of us who are Android users and cannot live with iOS. Mm-hmm. Because frankly, I have an SE. I bought it. Theo's going to get it as their main phone because they have the old SE, and we're going to switch them over soon. And I love that phone. But I cannot live with that 16:9 display. With it's too small. I can't deal with the bezels. I can't deal with the low resolution. It's a beautiful display. There's no doubt about it. It has all the good specs that you need, and the camera is solid. I do wish it put the 11 main camera and not the XR's main camera in there, though, because night mode missing is very vexing on that phone to me. I mean, it still performs. Don't get me wrong, but if you have an iPhone 11 as well, which I do and you do, it's kind of like night and day. Part of the puns. It's night photography.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about the G because, the Moto G, I just mentioned the stylus and the power, which came out in February. And I mean, they were announced in February and came out like two months ago or something, just before the Moto Edge Plus, which I also reviewed for Hot Hardware. But anyway, they just announced the
Moto G
Fast and the Moto E. What a name, G Fast. Yeah. But you see, that's the thing. It goes back to what we were just saying. This thing has a Snapdragon 665, just like the Moto G Stylus and G Power. Mm-hmm. And they are naming it Fast because they've made it clear that they've spent some time optimizing the experience. So that phone stays fast. It's running Android 10. Basically, they took a Moto G Power and they put a 720p display instead of a 1080p display of the same size and same hole punch configuration. They lessened the front camera a little bit, and then they put a smaller 4,000 milliamp hour battery versus 5,000. And then the biggest kicker, and this is where I want your take on this, is they lowered the RAM to 3 gigabytes from 4. So $50 difference, although you can now buy, I think you can buy the G Power now for $229 instead of $250 on sale.
Yeah.
So for $30 difference, I personally would buy the G Power. But but we also know, David, what's going to happen. The G Fast is going to drop in price within a month, right? We're going to see it instead of $199, we're going to see it at $179 or something like that. So what's your take on them cutting those particular corners? Because to me, the display is fine. I could kind of live with it. The battery is fine too, but the RAM, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah,
332 versus 664 is a big $50 difference.
It's a huge difference. Like 6 gigs of RAM is pretty optimal for Android, and cutting anything below that is really dangerous. Like even on the A51, when I had all the apps cleared, it was using 2 gigabytes just on the system. And obviously part of that is because I'm sure One UI is not the cleanest.
Well, I was going to say One UI is probably a pig, and it probably runs best on flagships, right?
Yeah, probably. And I get that. And if Motorola spent time optimizing it, then hopefully it'll use less RAM. But like 3 gigabytes of RAM is so low. Like I was reading someone's review, and they basically just tallied up all the memory that individual apps that they use daily use. And after using like 5 apps, their 4 gigabytes was full. It was just
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was bad. So 3 gigs is just like, when it's that slim of a price difference, the Power is just such a better phone. What I don't really understand from Motorola is like, it seems like they come up with like, what's a feature that people like? Let's make a phone completely based on that, and then make 50 of them. It's just like, it's so weird. And the naming too is just
the fast. Yeah.
Don't call it the fast when there are phones that are faster than it. Like the Power is faster than the Moto Fast.
It's like they, it's kind of like, I feel like, they used to have the Moto G numbered, right? The number G, and there was a Plus version, and then there's a regular.
And those were good phones. Like the Moto G7 was awesome.
Right. And then there's now the Stylus, but I'm surprised they didn't do like a Play. Remember, the Play was the cheap version. So why didn't they call this the Moto G Play?
I do not know.
Because fast is a bit weird.
Fast is extremely weird. Fast is like I saw that during the briefing, and I was just like, what the heck is this?
But at the same time, the price $199 is perfect for this pandemic, and it's going to go down in price from that. But again, here's the beef I have with all the Moto Gs for the last forever, the US models. Since the Moto G, which I've had every single version of the Moto G in my hands, I've always loved them. I've reviewed many of them for Geekspin and other folks. It's the lack of NFC. Like, especially, okay, so it was pretty stupid for them not to come out with NFC on the G Power and the G Stylus at their price points when we'd been bitching about no NFC on every prior G series. But technically that was announced before COVID, so I can, excuse them. But the fact that they launched the G Fast, oh God, that name, the G Fast, without NFC, even though, I know that it takes a while to develop a phone, it was probably etched in stone by the time COVID hit. But I kind of feel like there's going to be a version of the G Fast for South America or something with NFC, because they always seem to do that, right?
Yeah.
But the G series in other markets has NFC. So I would be really vexed if I find out there's a G Fast with NFC somewhere, because right now, contactless payment is really the only way. I'm the person in my household right now that does the shopping, because I'm generally the healthier one and the better immune system one. And I'm using Google Pay for everything.
Yeah, and I've used Google Pay for
amazing.
years.
And I did too. Great. Yeah, and it's not new for me, but our point is, particularly right now, like, I cannot believe you want to sell. Like, you're totally hitting all the boxes by making a $200 phone, guys.
Yeah.
My Austin impersonation. Hey, guys. But, I mean, the point is, like, seriously, NFC, like, I don't get it. But you know what I'm actually more excited about? You're going to laugh at me, because I know you're going to laugh at me, David, because both of you and I have spent our entire days on flagships, right? I'm super stoked about the Moto E.
Yeah, well, That's an
because
interesting...
it's going to be $99 in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
like it's
that's
$159 right now, and you know it's going to be $100 by midsummer.
That's
and
true.
for $100, that thing has a Snapdragon 632. That is blowing my freaking mind.
Yeah, for $100, that would be pretty awesome.
But 2 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
You can't run anything.
You can't run that as your main phone. You got to use it as like just an interface for like your smart home or something.
That's going to be brutal.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that's the only thing holding me back from getting super excited about it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the cameras it does dual cameras, so it has a depth sensor on the back. This is pretty cool. The display is 720p, but it's smaller at 6.2, I think, instead of 6.4. So that's perfectly fine.
Which is still large.
The battery is 3550 milliamp hours, something like that. So that's going to be okay on a Snapdragon 632, which is pretty efficient. And it's all plastic, but it's got the, fake glass plastic in the back. So it actually looks pretty sexy. Like, I think it's good, but like 2 gigs, come on. Like, I think they should have put 4 gigs on the G Fast to at least match the G Power. The G Power should have had 6 gigs. Yeah. And then they should have put like, they should have put at least 3 gigs on the E. Like, I know it's not still too little, but come on.
Yeah, I agree.
It's rough. I don't know. Maybe we're asking for too much.
I don't think so.
I think it's our jobs, right? To ask for too much.
Yeah.
Come on. We're doing it. We're asking for too much. So anyway, those phones are announced. They're going to be out, I think, June 12th. So if you're looking for a really cheap phone, like almost disposable but unlocked, I think Best Buy is going to carry those and others. And some of the carriers like Boost Mobile will have them. So, check it out. I think some of the carriers in Canada as well. $199 for the G Fast, it's going to go down in price quickly, and $159 or $49 or whatever it was for the E, and it's going to go down in price rapidly after that too. Yeah. So because Moto phones always go down in price rapidly, which is kind of nice about them. I always say, like, to my friends, I have a friend who's bought, I think, 3 or 4 of the G series over the years, and he just pinged me and said, "Hey, I see a new G series. My phone's dying. He's got like a G5 or something." And I said, "Oh yeah, get the G Power. It's gonna be less. Yeah. It's gonna be close to 200 very soon, and at that price, it's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah.
For like a non-power user,
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. We talked a little bit about the Pixel 4, so let's jump into that because 9to5 Google discovered a while back, I think it was in February, that there was a seller maybe on eBay or something. A Chinese seller was selling a rear shell of a Pixel 4a XL, not the 4 XL, not the 4a, but the 4a XL. And it clearly looked like the camera pod had dual cameras. So they went ahead and bought it, and they received the part, and they did a photo shoot of the part on 9to5 Google. And so the link will be in the show notes alongside David's Galaxy review and some details on those G series and E series phones. But I think this is interesting development. So the Pixel 4a XL has been, as far as we know, canceled, right?
Yeah. Apparently they're just going to do a 4a.
They were going to do a 4a XL with a dual camera system.
Interesting.
What do you think was in there? Do you think there was an ultra wide in there or a telephoto like before? That's kind of what we all want to know, right?
I would lean on it being ultra wide.
Me too.
But at the same time, these things go back in development by like at least a year or two, and it was probably being made around the same time as the 4.
Yeah.
And because of that, we all know what happened with the 4 and the ultra wide. So, Google said that it didn't need to have it. Nobody uses ultra wide cameras, yada, yada.
Oh, they're so wrong.
Even though they have the AI zoom that makes regular zooming better and makes you, quote unquote, not really need a telephoto. So it's like, anyway.
It's so weird. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Google's
I think
Google.
the Pixel 4 camera is solid as a rock, and I'm sure the 4a is going to be solid as a rock too.
Yeah.
But I really, really hope that the 5 next year has 3 cameras. It better have 3 cameras. And,
I feel like it'll have 2, but we'll see.
Well, I think you're right. I'm a bit worried about that too, because I think you might be right, simply because there is a tendency now for flagships to omit the telephoto altogether. Look at the OnePlus 8. Look at the V60. Look at, I would like to say, the Galaxy S20, because anyone who doesn't know this yet, other than the Ultra, which has a periscope telephoto, which is a proper telephoto, the 64 megapixel telephoto on the S20, S20 Plus, that's not a telephoto. They're using the resolution of the sensor to get zoom in.
It's like the V60.
Correct.
I gave them a lot of crap for that.
And they're using the sensor for doing 8K video as well. So they're doing it, doing different things with it. So it's kind of cheating, and I don't like this cheating. I am not on board. I want my real optical telephoto, and seriously, like, please stop doing this. It sounds like the Galaxy Note 20 is going to also have a fake telephoto, and I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't. It's not right, David. How do you feel? Are you cranky?
I'm an optical camera person, and I call out companies constantly when they fake optical zoom, or that they say that they have more optical zoom than they do.
OnePlus started that with the 7 Pro, right?
Yeah, I gave them a lot of crap for that. I gave them a ton of crap for that last year, and then Xiaomi on the Mi Note 10, literally printed on the back of the phone, it says 5x optical zoom, but it's actually only like 2.4x or something, and then they use AI cropping and stitching.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's like, it literally says it printed on the back of the phone, and I'm like, that is market, like, misinformation.
Yeah. So, speaking of the Mi Note 10 that you reviewed a while ago, the Mi 10 is in my hands right now. I have a non-Pro version of the Mi 10 5G.
The Pro is really good.
Honestly, I love that phone. Again, no telephoto though.
Yeah.
Big 108 megapixel main sensor, does zooming very well because lots of pixels, but no telephoto, only an ultra wide, but it has a macro, and it has all this. What's with macros everywhere? And
I was just gonna bring that up. I was like, it's so pointless.
It's like there's like somebody has a surplus of macro modules out there. It's like, I'll sell you a macro for $5. $5.
I actually was asking someone about that yesterday, and basically the consensus was like, it's way cheaper than putting a telephoto in a camera, and it's really, really easy to just add a camera to the spec sheet. Right, you can just slap it on there, and it's like OnePlus putting a 2 megapixel macro cam. Like, what are you talking about?
Oh my God! Don't even get me started. The OnePlus 8. I am so mad about that. You know why I'm mad about that, David? Not only because of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
But did you realize for 1 second that the ultra wide on the 8, not the 8 Pro, the 8, is the exact same module and sensor as the ultra wide on the 7T.
Yeah.
And guess what the 7T ultra wide lets you do?
It has a moving motor that lets you do macro.
Correct. And no, but it's in there on the 8. It's just not enabled. So they disabled it in software, which would have given the macro lens autofocus capability, and then they put a shitty 2 megapixel fixed focus.
Yep.
It's fixed focus.
Yep. I just don't understand. The only thing I can come up with is that they wanted to add another camera to the...
Yeah, they wanted to have 3 cameras in the back. They wanted to be able to say that because the telephoto is expensive. I get that. But like, why destroy a feature that is so good on the 7T, that is $499 right now, and so good on the 8 Pro, which is also obviously more expensive. But like why not put that third camera and make it like, here's a crazy thing. Why didn't they put the third camera, the same like camera without an infrared filter like they did on the 8 Pro, like that weird color, whatever, the
color filter camera,
color filter camera? Like, it was completely gimmicky. It doesn't do anything, but at least you had 3 cameras in the back then. It's also a cheap module, and it would do something different and cool, and you could still have macro with autofocus by using the ultra wide, guys. Come on, like, why did you do that? I'm so glad I'm not the only one who's totally butthurt by this. Like, I've had this conversation with other people, and they just shrug at me, and I'm like, you do not understand. This is so wrong.
And this is like, bringing it back to like the true optical zoom. This is why I am so sad that Huawei has led to the fate that it has, because they are like some of the only ones that are doing actually awesome prism optical light zoom. It's not AI crap. Like, they do have really good AI stitching if you zoom more, but at least they have true optical zoom, and it's really good. So,
and with the P40 Pro non-plus, the Pro, you get an RYYB sensor on that 12 megapixel telephoto. So you get this incredible low light performance.
Yeah. The light, I remember when I did my P30 Pro review and I did it in Morocco, and taking photos at night in Morocco with the P30 Pro is like, this is like magic. This is like, what the heck? Yeah.
And so it's even more what the F with the P40 Pro. You're going to love it. I mean, you're getting the Pro Plus. I have the Pro Non Plus, and I'm telling you, the Pro Non Plus. So just to be clear, the Pro Plus will not have the RYYB sensor on any of the two telephotos, right? Just be aware of that. It's standard RGB. So you're not going to get the low light. But if you get your hands on a P40 Pro, like borrow it from somebody. You're in New York. I'm sure you'll find somebody that can hand you one for a minute.
Yeah.
But I would put them side by side for your review.
Except I can't see them.
Because, well, I'm sure you can meet up somehow.
Yeah.
Like, just clean it up, whatever you need to do. But the thing is, I would suggest you get your hands on it, because it'll be a very interesting comparison to compare how much low light performance is affected by them not having an RYYB sensor on the telephoto of the Plus. So...
Yep.
But so speaking of Pixel and Android and Google, some weird stuff around Android 11. So Android 11 beta was supposed to be released like now, soon.
Today.
It was leaked and delayed at the same. Well, it was delayed a few days ago and then leaked. But by leaked I mean some people received the update on their.
Yeah,
Pixel.
They were supposed to get a security update and they accidentally got pushed the beta. Which is classic Google.
And so there's a bunch of beta reviews out there.
Yeah.
If you look carefully, especially Michal at XDA Forums.
Yeah, he's awesome about digging into that stuff. He's really, really good at it.
So what stands out for you right now in terms of the features on Android 11 that we've seen? Anything?
I'll be honest, I haven't even looked.
Neither have I. I'm not really that excited about new OSs. I mean, it's like, okay, as long as it works.
Yeah, I haven't looked at any of the new beta stuff. I do have 11 on my Pixel 4 just because, I've helped make articles for like stuff that's new and all that stuff. But we're getting to a point where like it's hard to make any new features that are really that exciting anymore. Most OS updates at this point are just like security stuff and giving users a little bit more control or less control if Google wants to take away certain permissions and stuff, which they've actually done. Like in Android 11, installing APKs from third-party sources is actually more difficult now.
Jesus.
Which makes me think that they're doing that because of Huawei. I mean,
I understand, but I also hate it.
Yeah.
It was nice when there was a main setting in the menus where you could just say like,
allow me to do whatever I want.
Let the floodgates open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But look, the reality is that don't get me wrong, just because I don't really sound like I care doesn't mean I don't care about Android 11. I do. It's just that for me, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I will get it when I get it on my Pixel and on my OnePlus 8 Pro, which is not my daily driver, but I also have a Pixel 4 XL that I use. So I'll get it when I get it and I'll enjoy it and I'll probably loathe some of it. But the reality for me is that what I like about Android, stock Android, Pixel Android, is that it is slowly getting and gaining some of the really good features that other manufacturers have added over time, like scrollable screen capture is something that
screen recording,
which I think really like you kind of have to have right now. And so it's nice to see those getting added, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like overall, I'm not jumping up and down with joy. Like, I could hang on to my phone running Android 10 for a while and be perfectly happy.
Yeah, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I mean, eventually it's going to get a little dated. I don't know if you've looked at an old version of iOS phone pre-iOS 7.
Probably bad.
But it looks like, it's like looking at Windows 3.1 now, you know? Or even Windows XP. My God, look at Windows XP if you have a chance. It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Speaking of cool Android phone with cool cameras, this is the third week in a row we're talking about the Vivo X50.
Oh, yeah.
Because the gimbal leaks, and then there was the actual announcement, and then this week they actually launched the entire X50 series as a global launch, which is like, what? I didn't know Vivo did global stuff now.
Yeah. I'm hoping they change their OS a little bit to make it work well for global markets.
It's Color OS or whatever it's called. No, what is it called?
Fun Touch OS.
Fun Touch. Yeah, Color OS is Oppo.
Color OS has gotten really, really good.
Yeah, Color OS. I've got the Find X2 Pro, and wow.
Yeah, Color OS 7 on the Find X2 Pro is like completely new and amazing on that phone. But the last time I used Fun Touch OS on the Vivo Nex 3 or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I went to China to find it and do it, and it was it was borderline unusable. So I'm really hoping that they make it good, because I'm actually writing a feature that's related to this phone right now. And it's basically about how like manufacturers are finally starting to buy into like, let's make the sensor big. And
yeah, I love that.
Vivo's helping on that train now. So now you've got Huawei, you've got who else was it? Oh yeah, Samsung, even though the 108 sensor on the Samsung is not amazing. But the sensor on the Vivo is actually a Samsung sensor. So that's it.
It says here that the Vivo X50 Pro retains the micro gimbal system but uses a 48 megapixel IMX589, which is the same sensor that we have on the OnePlus 8 Pro and Oppo Find X2 Pro, which is a baller of a sensor.
Yeah, that sensor specifically has insanely good white balance. Like the best white balance I've ever seen on a phone. So,
I mean, I'm excited about the fact that this, like, I personally think that Sony's IMX sensors are the best.
Yeah, they've gotten really, really, really good. I think that the 589 is the best sensor on the market, in my opinion.
589 is the best sensor right now. It's so good. Like, I can't remember the details. Aren't the pixels like 1.2 microns each for a total of 2.4?
Yeah, 2.4. But
they're binned or something? Yeah.
For the Vivo X50 Pro Plus, they're using a 50 megapixel.
50 megapixel.
And it's bigger.
Is that the sensor that's in the P40 Pro?
No, the P40 Pro uses a sensor that is 1/1.28 inches.
Oh, right.
And the one in the Vivo is 1/1.31. But that is bigger than the Ultra sensor, though. Okay. And because it's bigger than the Ultra sensor and it's 50 megapixels instead of 108, individual pixel size is larger. So you can
And that's the Samsung one. That's the one you think is a Samsung pixel sensor.
I need to check.
Because I'm looking at the Android Authority story right now that Hadley wrote, and it says the specs are this. So there's 3 Vivo X50s, folks, in case you're, because we're like breathing that stuff every day, but you don't know. So far on the show, the last 2 times, we've talked about the Vivo X50 Pro, which has a gimbaled rear main camera that's a Sony IMX 589, a 48 megapixel. So it looks like the Vivo X50 has a 48 megapixel camera with OIS, no gimbal on the main. We don't know if it's the same Sony IMX 589, but knowing that this is a BBK group, I bet you it's a 589. Yeah. Because they tend to share a lot of their purchases, Well,
what's funny was like Oppo originally said that the Find X2 Pro, like that sensor was made specifically for that phone. And then they put it, of course, in the OnePlus. And if they put it in the Vivo, it's like, yeah, it's a BBK.
I mean, that's totally a BBK thing. And again, you buy more as a group, you get a discount.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's the best sensor on the market, so like, good for them.
Sure. I mean, good for them. So assuming it's the same sensor, so Vivo X50 has no gimbal on the main sensor, then it has a 13 megapixel 2x telephoto, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and 5 megapixel macro. The Pro adds the gimbal to the main sensor, has the same 2x optical zoom, 13 megapixel, has the same 8 megapixel ultra wide, but then the macro is replaced with a periscope lens, so it has 2 telephotos, I guess. Just like the P40 Pro Plus.
Yeah.
And then there is a Vivo X50 Pro Plus, speaking of Pro Pluses, and that has a gimbal apparently, and has a Samsung ISOCELL Bright GN1 50 megapixel sensor.
Yep, that's what it is. Yeah.
Woof. That's going to be a killer.
It's crazy that it's like better than the Ultra. It's like,
I know.
Samsung's sensor division is working faster than the mobile division is.
Totally is.
Yeah.
Then it has a 32 megapixel 2x optical telephoto, and then it has a 13 megapixel periscope and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. This thing is insane.
Yeah, it looks crazy.
Like,
I love how it
holy
looks
crap.
too. It's so cool.
And so I don't know about the other specs, but I guess they all run Snapdragon. Oh, wait, no. The Pro Plus is an 865,
Mm-hmm.
and the regular Pro and the regular model are 765G.
765G, yeah.
So
makes
5G,
sense.
that's actually one of the first phones. There's so few phones with 765G. It's so weird.
I know.
At least not in the US, and we haven't seen a single one yet.
Yeah.
And then batteries are 4200, 4315, and 4350, respectively.
Yeah.
And then super fast charging, 33 watts and 44 watt, depending on model. You got a 6.56 inch Full HD Plus OLED with 90 hertz refresh for the X50 and the X50 Pro. And the Pro Plus gets 120 hertz refresh rate.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if that's the same display as the Oppo Find X2 Pro and OnePlus 8 Pro, which, as you know, have the exact same display but completely different calibration.
Totally
which is
different
kind of
calibration.
amazing.
And the Oppo's calibration is way better in my opinion.
Oh, it's so much better
It's so
than the
good.
OnePlus calibration.
It's so
I
good.
love how warm it feels. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm stoked. Here are the prices. $490 roughly for the regular X50. $546 roughly. These are Chinese prices translated to US dollars. For the X50 Pro with the gimbal. These are for 8 128 configurations. And then it's $602 for the
That's so cheap.
for the X50 Pro Plus in 8 128, and it goes up to
so cheap.
to more. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
Like the gimbal itself is insane. You know, I had Richard Lai on the show last week from Engadget, my pal.
I love Richard.
And we both decided, and I want to know how you feel about this, that the gimbal was the next big thing. Like after the periscope zoom, like that's a huge advancement in
have they
mobile
shown
photography
any
right now.
like video of that or anything?
They have. There's a side-by-side video of non-gimbal versus gimbal, like
Okay.
OIS, standard OIS and EIS versus a video at 4K versus a gimbal at 4K, and the gimbal is just blowing it away. You can kind of see the jitter
Little
of the
warp.
footsteps,
Yeah.
a little bit of that, and then you see it's completely rock star, like it's complete like
Okay.
steady cam. But look, this is super exciting. I can't believe I'm talking about this phone for the third time in a row, but I think it's because I'm super excited about it. This is freaking amazing.
Yeah,
and
it
it's
seems
coming
cool.
globally, so whatever that means for the US, probably in the same way as, who was it recently? Oh, Poco announced that the F2 Pro was coming globally. And you know what they meant for the US? Oh, you can buy it on GearBest. GearBest is our exclusive distributor for the US.
Oh, great.
And I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be hypocrite. Some of my affiliate links on the show notes are with GearBest because I am an affiliate at GearBest, and they're great. But I'm just feeling like that's a cop-out to say that you have a phone coming to the US if you make it available on GearBest, guys. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of funny. Speaking of OnePlus, BBK Group, and all that,
Mm-hmm.
the OnePlus McLaren partnership is over.
Yep.
Strangely, suddenly, without much fanfare. I kind of feel sad about that. I kind of enjoyed the once a year, over the topness of the OnePlus McLaren phones. How do
Yeah,
you feel?
I would have liked to see that happen more, but I would have also like to see the sales numbers of the McLaren edition phones.
Oh, I mean, that's not the point, though. This
I
is like a
know,
Halo.
yeah.
It's a Halo thing, isn't it? A Halo thing?
Well, it is, but like I don't know, maybe it's either OnePlus decided they didn't want to pay McLaren a ton of money anymore, or the other way around, right? Like
yeah, it's kind of hard to see what happened there, right?
I mean, are the Porsche Design editions still happening with Huawei?
Yes, as far as I know, the Mate series. So there was a Mate 30 Pro Porsche design. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and Oppo's got the Lamborghini phones. So
Yeah, that's right. Lamborghini.
so funny with the cars and the phones. Yeah.
It is so funny.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, this is sad and weird, but it's mostly like how kind of coy everybody is about the end of this partnership. They're all very polite about it, but we don't really know. It seems like there's more to the story, but I don't also want to be a gossiper,
Yeah.
Because why gossip about that? It is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss it.
Well, I like the OnePlus 8 Pro. Like, it didn't feel as like perfect as every other OnePlus phone that I've reviewed. It felt like it had a decent amount of flaws. And it just felt kind of strange, right? Like why did they make this decision? Why did they make that decision? Like, for example, we were talking about the macro camera, and then the color filter camera makes no sense, and like, they had to disable it in Europe because people were like trying to use it to look through clothes and stuff. And it's like, God.
No, what was funny about the OnePlus 8 Pro's color filter camera was that how people were so surprised by what it does. You can take any old point and shoot, like a crappy old point and shoot that you find like at your local thrift store. I guess not now because of COVID, but when the thrift stores open again, go get yourself a cheap digital point and shoot for $10, and then take it apart and remove. There's this filter right in front of the sensor that's called an IR filter. You remove that, and you have the exact same effect that you get with the color filter on a... This is not a new thing. It's just a cool effect. That's all.
Yeah, it's like a full spectrum thing. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
The Honor X10 was launched a couple of weeks back, and somehow I keep forgetting to mention it on the show, and I'm not quite sure what to think of that phone, but it looks like a mid-ranger with a Kirin 820. I mean, it's, again, irrelevant to us. I hate to say this because I love Honor phones, and as much as I love Huawei phones, but right now without Google mobile services, they're kind of like a challenge to recommend. So what's cool about this though is that it's a mid-range phone, 6.63 Full HD Plus IPS display, 90 hertz, which is interesting because I think this might be the first IPS panel we've seen with 90 hertz. Because
the Razer phone.
No, the Razer had 120 hertz at IPS, but it didn't have 90, did it?
Oh, you mean 90 specifically? Yeah.
Yeah, 90 specifically.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that it has a bunch of cameras, and some of them, like for a mid-range phone, are kind of like eye-raising. 40 megapixel f/1.8 RYYB primary camera. So basically, the P30 Pro. Well, it's not OIS,
main
so probably
camera.
P30 main camera.
That's decent.
Yeah, not bad, eh? Not bad for like, I don't know what this is going to sell for. Probably like $250.
Yeah.
And then you've got 8 megapixel f/2.4 wide angle. And it, of course, you have a 2 megapixel macro camera. It's ridiculous.
Literally
now.
Murder me right now. The other thing we didn't mention was that the Moto G Fast also has a macro
2
camera.
megapixel. But okay, look.
Well, that one's a 5 megapixel, but I mean, who cares?
I have to give Moto credit though for one thing. On the G Stylus and the G Power, that 2 megapixel macro has autofocus, David. Hey, that's important for a macro.
I just like, you know what's funny? Every time I do a briefing and they show macro camera stuff, they use the same photos.
Your eyes roll. It's right.
But they use the same photos.
Oh, you mean Moto does?
Yeah. Like, yeah, Moto's use the same photos for every macro camera they've shown.
So freaking funny. So needless to say, this is a China-only phone right now. It's a 5G phone, so it's got a Kirin 820, which supports 5G. It's kind of like equivalent of like a Snapdragon 7 or 6 series.
Is it a built-in 5G modem, or is it the ball-long modem?
I don't know. It doesn't say here. This is from XD developers. They would know a thing or two about the detail. So here are the prices, folks. 6 gigs with 64 gigs is the base price. $267 US.
Dang.
4,300 milliamp hour battery. Oh, it has a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, which tells me that it probably has a hole punch in the front.
Yeah.
Because that's what Honor's been doing a lot of. But look, you got to give them props for putting the P30 Pro camera on a $270 phone.
Yeah,
like, wow.
That's pretty dope. Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. I kind of wish I could get my hands on these phones. I should hit up Haya. She probably won't send me one. I don't know. I wrote a story for Android Police back in November, and it annoyed a lot of people at Huawei. Yeah. But I'm like, come on. I'm not trying to be mean. I love the phone. I love the hardware, but the GMS thing.
I mean, what are you going to do?
It's just not really practical, right?
What are you supposed to do, though? Literally, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. All right, so let's see. That I'm glad we covered that because I've just been forgetting to put it in the show. And it's kind of interesting when I like to keep tabs on what the Chinese market looks like because it tells us where we're going, you know?
Yeah.
In the West. So this is also not a new rumor, but it kind of caught my eye, and I want to know how you feel about it. There is very strong, Apple Insider has a story, very strong rumors of the iPhone 12 still coming with Lightning and not not Type-C connectivity. And the rationale is that probably on the 13th, Apple will remove all the ports. And so they don't want to introduce a USB-C ecosystem change for their customers a year before going portless.
Yeah, that's a good
In that
point.
case, I can totally get it. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. But if the 13 switches to USB Type-C at that point, I'm going to be like, damn it. You know?
No ports on an iPhone just seems...
Well, that seems totally Apple to me.
Yeah. I mean ugh.
If they do fast wireless charging, which I'm sure they're working on.
Yeah, but think about like all the times that you're like out late at a bar with your friends and your phone just dies and you have literally no option.
Oh, reverse wireless charging from their Samsung Galaxy S30.
No. It's so bad.
No, I know.
Power banks are just going to be dead. Like they have wireless charging power banks, but they're so slow.
You know, maybe it'll be like the iPad Pro, right? So the iPad Pro has switched to USB-C a while back, and now it's been a few generations, so it makes sense. Now they're well established in that. And they've added support for reading drives and stuff now, so it's actually usable. But they all have that 3-pin connector in the back, right?
Yeah.
For the keyboard. So what if the iPhone 13, so 12 will have Lightning, that's what the rumor is. The 13, what if the 13 has 3 pins in the back?
Like if it's just a pin, pogo pin.
Yeah, for accessories. And then it has, and of course that's very proprietary, right? And then it has, and that's just for power basically. And then it has the wireless charging for everything else. At that point, you know, I can imagine companies that do these battery pack cases for iPhones that are super popular. What are they called?
The Movi and
yeah, you know the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah,
right?
and like Zero Lemon and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those will probably piggyback off the pogo pins on the back.
Yeah.
To get tight integration.
Yeah.
And so I can see something like them doing something like that.
I still don't like it. Still don't like it.
No, neither do I. But that's Apple.
You're gonna have a brand new car that has like a wireless charging mat like built into it or something if you're driving a lot.
They're a dime a dozen. Look on Amazon. Like that's the thing, right? They're
know.
so cheap now.
Yeah.
And if Apple launches their own high-speed standard, you know it's going to become like instantly. There's going to be a proliferation of MFI compatible high-speed wireless chargers.
Yeah.
That also Qi compatible for the rest of the world.
This is true. I mean, I will say that like I don't go out that much anymore, obviously.
Clearly.
But we put wireless chargers all over our apartment, and
yeah. Of course you did.
I want to use, I would like to use the Oppo Find X2 Pro as my main phone, but I can't because.
But I know that's the one big thing that in my review on Hot Hardware, I was like, oh my God, guys, why did you not put wireless charging on that phone? It's so good.
Yeah, you could have even put slow wireless charging in here.
I know, but it's the same philosophy.
The 65 watt charging is freaking amazing, but come on, this is why I'm using the OnePlus 8 Pro right now, just because it has wireless charging. Yeah.
Same with me. I'll be using the Oppo in a heartbeat if it had wireless charging. It'd be my main phone right now. It's such a good phone.
Yeah, same. I like it more. I like it more than the OnePlus 8 Pro.
I love the periscope lens on that. It's so good. Everything's so good about this phone.
Yeah.
Even the software is good on this phone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not pure.
I love it.
As pure, but it's good.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
Damn. Well, so the last bit we have is ARM. That's again from last week. ARM released a bunch of new designs because that's what ARM does. ARM releases chip designs that are licensed by chip manufacturers and end up being in various Qualcomm, Exynos, Kirin, and other, and MediaTek chips. And so, I'm not a big guru on this stuff, but apparently they have a whole bunch of new designs. So that means we're going to see probably some new chips coming out that are more power efficient, have more AI features, etc., etc. They say here 25% more powerful than for the Mali G78, which is the GPU, versus the 77, which is the current design. And then, 20% increase in sustained performance, in quotes, whatever that means, for the A78 CPU design, which is, compared to the A77.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I think it's interesting simply because, ARM makes the world go round. it's hard for people to understand that because most people don't even know what ARM is.
Yeah,
but
they're one of those unsung heroes that nobody really knows.
ARM is responsible for a proliferation of extremely powerful and power efficient mobile processors that are RISC-based that run basically the world right now because the world is mobile. And, even laptops are using ARM chips now.
Yeah.
And so it's, basically anything like your doorbell uses an ARM chip. The Pebble smartwatch, I used to work for the company, had an ARM chip in that. Like everything has an ARM chip, like hard drive controllers, Ethernet controllers, Wi-Fi chips. They all have tiny little ARM processors in them.
Yeah.
Because ARM is designs chip from like super efficient like IoT devices all the way to like, laptop and server. They use ARM in server farms for like big Amazon AWS and stuff like that. So, I mean, I assume that AWS is using ARM and not Intel. It's way more efficient at this point. But who knows? I'm not an expert in that. So, I don't know. How do you feel? You think ARM is like just chugging along, or is there anything standing out here for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to happen, right? Like, they're accelerating a lot faster than companies like Intel have been. Intel's are still stuck on 14 nanometer, which is really, really sad. I remember when I worked there, I remember talking to an engineer, and this was in like 2016, and he was like, yeah, we've got our designs ready through 2023. It's like, so you just think there's not going to be any competition that's going to force you to adapt? And then, of course, you've seen what's happened with AMD and how they're like, they're already on 10 nanometer, I think, and just like wrecking Intel on every corner. And so this isn't, directly in comparison to ARM, but I'm just saying that like it seems like they've got a schedule and they're going to just keep making better architectures. And I've talked to a lot of engineers about this because I've always been kind of interested in like how do you just keep making things more efficient constantly, right? Like, if you have a way to like make things better, like, wouldn't it be like a huge revelation to be able to figure out an architecture that's even more efficient every single year? But apparently that's people's jobs. So
I mean, Intel had an ARM division.
Yep.
And they sold it.
I remember I was part of that team.
That's probably the biggest mistake they ever did, I think, because it's just weird how dogmatic they're about x86 architecture.
Their chip was so bad, though.
No, it was, but that's not the point. The point I'm making is that they could have continued. They could have kept it in the back burner, and then when ARM became a thing, they could have said, "Okay, let's get serious about it."
Yeah, this is true. I mean, they were
so dogmatic.
They were like ahead of the curve in a way, right? But they were so obsessed with x86. Like they wanted to put x86 in phones, which is just stupid. Like that's such.
They did put x86 in phones. Do you remember some of these phones?
I know, that's what I mean. There was an Asus phone that had it that like couldn't run half of the apps on the at the time Android marketplace because it was like because it was x86 and not ARM, and it's just
I know.
Why would you do that? It's like the same thing that happened with Huawei, except instead of GMS, it's the architecture. So
I mean, are you worried that it's clear from our discussion earlier with the A51 that the Exynos is not holding a candle to Qualcomm anymore, and MediaTek is still there, especially with their 5G chips. I think they're very exciting because their price points are very accessible, and I'm a big fan of seeing from $300 5G phones soon. Low band only, but that's fine. Do you feel like, aren't you worried about the lack of competition? I mean, the fact that Kirin is really out of the equation, right? Because they're Huawei and Honor only, and with all the politics around that, these phones manufacturers are not going to pick Kirin chips. MediaTek's safe because it's Taiwanese, so we're going to potentially see MediaTek chips, but it's very clear that MediaTek is not selling well in the US, especially their higher end chips. on phones because the carriers don't seem to want these phones, right? And the
Yeah.
carriers dictate a lot still. And then you have Exynos, which clearly the carriers don't mind because, well, the Galaxy A51 is sold by Verizon with an Exynos chip. So, but it seems like the performance isn't there. The edge is no longer there. Exynos used to be somewhat competitive with Qualcomm at the high end, but doesn't anymore. And then, of course, Apple. But again, silo, it's like Kirin, right? It's going to stay in Apple's land. Are you worried that really like MediaTek is kind of like the underdog, but isn't really getting the traction it wants, and then Qualcomm is just dominating? Isn't that a little scary?
Look, I think we've all known that Qualcomm is basically a monopoly for the last 5 years.
They kind of are, right?
Surprisingly, I think that they have trudged along fairly well. They actually make pretty massive jumps year over year.
I'm not suggesting that Qualcomm's not competitive. I mean,
no, yeah. But we are starting to see an issue. We are starting to see the problem of them being the only option, in that the Snapdragon 865 is an extremely expensive chip. But if you want to have the flagship chip, you also have to pay for the flagship 5G modem. And a lot of manufacturers...
But what I don't understand is why we're not seeing more flagships, like bona fide $600 phones that are Snapdragon 765G, because that chip was announced alongside, has built-in 5G.
Because
for carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile, who don't have a big millimeter wave presence, I mean, it supports millimeter wave, but you don't have to have it. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
I think it's because manufacturers are worried that they don't feel like they can release a flagship phone that doesn't have the best processor, because Apple's phones, all of Apple's phones will always have their best processor. Apple doesn't have a mid-range chip. Their best chip goes in the iPad and in the iPhone, and that's it, and probably will go in the MacBook at some point, right?
Yeah,
and so
totally.
Manufacturers, they're like, we can't release a phone that has a cheaper processor, especially, mainstream companies, because then they won't be able to market it against the iPhone, really, And so they kind of have to fall into whatever Qualcomm offers them. And currently, that's an extremely expensive chip. So they've had to jack their prices up. Like, OnePlus's phone is almost $900, and that's the most expensive phone they've ever released. So that's already an issue.
For sure. But it's worth it, I think. I mean, it's still a very competitive price for what you're getting, right?
Of course, it's just that, most people don't care about 5G, and 5G is not ready yet. And
that is why I want to see those 765 phones.
Yeah. Well, and that's why the Pixel 5 is supposed to have
Pixel
it.
5, but OnePlus Z or Z, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about this with Richard Lai last week after that interview with Fast Company that Pete Lau did, right?
Yeah.
It's like cheaper OnePlus phones are coming. This is exciting to me. This is actually more exciting to me than the stupid OnePlus with its macro camera.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, of course. It's funny because the phrase cheaper OnePlus phones are coming does not seem like it fits with their brand.
No, but maybe they're realizing that with this whole pandemic that maybe there's room for that now.
Yeah,
Apple has certainly shown it.
I'm pretty sure that's always been in the cards for them. It was always part of the plan to slowly...
I do feel that the OnePlus 8 is a bit of an anomaly because, as you said, the pricing of the 865 makes it difficult to reach price points that are more affordable.
Yeah, I mean, the regular 8 makes no sense. The regular 8 makes literally no sense compared to the 7T.
I feel like I was the only one saying this for Lever. Like everybody else was like, yeah, I think it's fine. I'm like, no, it's not fine. It doesn't have a telephoto. It has a crappy macro, and then it costs way too much for what it is.
It's worse than the 7T in a lot of ways, in my opinion.
I told people in my review on Geekspin, I said, you either buy the 8 Pro and spend the money and get the best,
or you buy the 7T.
Or you buy a 7T for $499 because honestly, you don't need 5G right now. So enjoy.
Yeah. That was exactly what I said in my review too. Because
totally,
the 8 makes literally no sense in my opinion. It's like the same specs as the 7T with a worse camera system. So
totally, it's exactly it. You nailed it.
New body and 5G and an 865, but who cares? So yeah,
totally. Anyway, we should wrap it up. Do you want to tell the audience where they can find you on the internet, your various social handles, and of course, pimp some Android authority in there, will you?
Sure. Well, I'm most prevalent on Twitter, and I'm at Imel on Twitter, DurvidImel. I'm also on all the other social platforms just at my regular name, so at David Imel on Instagram and pretty much everything else. If you want to watch my videos or read my articles, they're on AndroidAuthority.com and the Android Authority YouTube channel.
Yay. Yeah, you should read David's reviews, and the videos are really, like, you're such a great videographer. I love your video reviews. They're
Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate that.
So watch Android Authority's YouTube channel, folks. Subscribe to all that good stuff. You know where to find me on the internet, folks. I'm at Tankgirl, that's TNKGRL, like the comic book character without the vowels. Twitter is a place to be if you want to chat with me about the podcast, comment, correct me, express your opinions and feelings and thoughts about the show. It's really hard to have commenting on podcasting apps, so this is where you want to find me for that. Instagram is where you'll find some photos of the phones I'm reviewing, some photos taken with phones, and, just live photos in general. And then YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. That's youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast is where you're going to find the video content for this channel. There is some unboxings mostly, but also some hands-ons, some reviews, that kind of stuff. Check it out. I also write for Hot Hardware, Geekspin, and Android Police from time to time, so check that out. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, tell your friends, all that good stuff, notification bell, comment in the videos as well if you can. As for the podcast, it lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. So if you're just joining us and want to subscribe, go visit mobiletechpodcast.com. There's also, you'll find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. I say we because I mean me and my guests. And since there's no kind of standardized ways of commenting, again, use Twitter. And also, please rate the podcast and or review the podcast, depending on what platform you're using. You sometimes have the option to do that. It really helps us to get reviews and ratings. And then there's a donate link in the show notes. Please consider donating. It helps because I have to do this on my own, and it's not like I make a lot of money from sponsorships and stuff. So please consider donating. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible is the platform for audiobooks. So if you like to read and you like to listen to books being read to you, you should really check them out. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have a partnership with them where if you join Audible, if you're not already a customer, you can actually support the podcast. So there is a special link in the show notes, audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. If you click on that link in the show description, you'll be able to, support us. You can sign up for Audible, check it out for a month for free. You don't have to stay if you don't like it, although I think you should. But you keep a book at the end of the trial and you help us out whether you stay or not. So please consider joining Audible through that link in the show description and the show notes. I also want to point out that they're a really great platform for audiobooks. That's kind of why I went with them. I really love books, and sometimes you can't read a book. Sometimes you're driving or whatever, and it's nice to have a book read to you. They have a lot of choices, a lot of selection. A lot of books read by the authors are just kind of my favorite thing. So check it out, audible.com. I want to thank them for being a long-time sponsor, and you should consider looking into them. David, I also want to thank you for being on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so it's good to good to podcast again.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and we'll definitely have you on again at some point in the future. And folks, there'll be a show next week, so please stay tuned for that. And until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.